this is my 15th lesson on a lecture series on how the United States is starting a new Cold War with Russia. And this is part 2 of our focus on Russia's annexation of Crimea and how that's being used by the USA to manufacture the notion that this means Russia is threatening to expand into Europe, conquer countries, to rebuild its glorious days of its old Russian or Soviet empire, right? And I want to focus on, today I want to focus specifically on U.S. Pro-democracy NGOs, all right? Because I think they're a problem, all right? So they should be looked at. All right, so I expect a big attack by liars here, right? So that's the first thing I say. First, I expect a big, desperate, pathetic Custer's last stand attack here. Why? Because the vast majority of people are irrevocably and uncontrollably self-serving little weasels. That's how most people are wired. I honestly believe that. I think, that's human nature. They're not fair. Or they may say they are. They may even think they are. They're not really honest, or they think they are. They will lie to serve self in little ways and big ways, in little ways and distorting the way they see things. Right? It's all about me for the purpose of me feel good. Right? And I believe the driving force within most people is a desire to please and serve self. Right? And that is the basis of the term idios. That's at least the ancient Greek meaning of it, which meant common man. Idios meant the common man. I mean, I know it sounds like idiot. I mean, it means that. It means you're ignorant and you're stupid, right? But it refers mostly to the common man, right? The low-level person. But more than that, it refers to the moral development of the common person, which is pretty low level, right? So, this is my view of the moral development of people. If this is the moral development from lowest to highest, and this is the amount of people, right, you may think that, well, okay, most people are pretty low level here, only a few people, right? As you go further, there's less people, like you get to the top of the pyramid. I think it's worse than that. I think it's like curvilinear, right? That the vast majority of people are very low level. It's all about pleasing self. Very few people will sacrifice, everything. Sacrifice their life, sacrifice their comfort, all right, to do what's right. All right? They're all about serving themselves first, pleasing themselves. That's human nature. All right, so the liars will lie by shifting all focus off of the massive body of absolutely proven facts and onto the single item because they believe they got something here, right? They got a little, crack in a little wedge in, in a little opening they can exploit, right? They believe they have a vulnerability. Then the liars will make a big maximum effort attack on the single item and claim, oh, it's all bullshit, it's debatable, right? In any event, they will attempt to manufacture widespread disbelief, right? Shift all focus here and use that to say, he's all bullshit. Then the liars will take a flying leap and falsely claim, see, you can forget all of the other facts because this proves that it's all bullshit as well, right? Hoping that no one remembers any facts, right? I've taught you 16 attacks by the USA upon Russia that were absolutely direct and absolutely proven. Only the USA attack upon Russia through supporting pro-Western groups in Ukraine is, partially indirect and not absolutely nailed down. Right? Maybe there's some holes, gaps in it, but we'll examine it. All right? I'll let you decide. All right? But it is a total lie to use as one weak example to make a blanket statement and say, see, this proves all the rest is bullshit. But that's exactly what they're going to try to do. When the other 16 are entirely separate, unrelated, and undeniably clear and direct attacks. The liars will falsely attempt to make this one weak point characterize all the rest. Right? And this is a common method of lying, shifting all focus onto the one little thing you can attack and say, see, it's all bullshit. You can forget everything else from now on to the end. Right? End of discussion. Right? They'll try that. I swear. That's human nature. You'll see people do that all the time. People are so pathetic. In fact, the opposite is true, namely that 16 absolutely direct USA attacks upon Russia are evidence of a long pattern of U.S. attacks, and thus gives credence to the claims that U.S. support for pro-West groups in Ukraine is yet another means of jamming Russia with a threat or with an attack. In other words, right, the one isolated case doesn't prove all the 16 false. It's the other way around. The 16, right, is far more heavy evidence that, proves the one. All right? It bears far more weight of evidence on the one. All right. So I want to warn you right now that this little section here in italics is my opinion. All right. I believe Ukraine has a crap economy, which it does, and a thoroughly corrupt government, which it does, and that corruption is deeply ingrained, and I believe it's going to be very difficult to root it all out. Right? Now, on a macroeconomic level, Ukraine is worth little to the USA. That's my opinion, right? As far as overall economics. On the other hand, Ukraine is worth far more in terms of its ability to jam Russia with both a threat of flipping a client state and increasing the NATO threat, which would induce a defensive response, which could then be portrayed as aggressive intent to attack European countries to the west to rebuild its empire, which then necessitates a new Cold War arms race, right? Which is how the real money will be made, right? This is how the real big money will be made, not through risky investments in Ukraine with an untrustworthy government. All right, but let's accept the liar's contention, right? Let's say what they're saying is true. Let's say the USA did not support the Euromaidan movement, right, which it did. Let's say the USA did not give $5 billion to promote Ukraine's European aspirations, which it did. That the USA assistance given to the Euromaidan group through direct USA diplomacy and guidance and through the training and support from U.S. NGOs in no way aided and abetted their revolution through which they stole power. Let's say none of this is true, right? Okay, let's say, all right, we'll go with what they're saying. That did happen, that did happen. All right, let's say none of it's true, right? Well, it doesn't even matter. That doesn't change these facts. It doesn't change the fact that the USA is making the crackpot claim that Russia's annexation of Crimea is proof of Russia's rapacious ambition to conquer nations to the west in order to rebuild the glory days of the old Ruski Soviet Empire. That the pro-West movement conducted a revolution in Ukraine and the Euromaidan group stole power. That happened. That pro-West government in Ukraine increases the risk of Ukraine joining NATO. Duh. That the risk of Ukraine joining NATO is already apparent through the annual Ukraine-NATO joint exercises they conduct every damn year called Sea Breeze, which have been conducted every year since 1997. That was 24 years now going, right? All right. So, I mean, they're already inching towards NATO. That there is zero correlation between Russia's annexation of Crimea and the purported desire of Russia to invade countries to the west to rebuild its glorious empire. There is zero comparison between the two scenarios. That in annexing Crimea, Russia was not initiating, right, wasn't starting, but rather reacting to the increased threat of Ukraine joining NATO that was dumped upon them when the Euromaidan group stole power, the pro-West group stole power in Ukraine through a revolution. That in annexing Crimea, Russia was not trying to gain something, but rather they're trying not to lose all its military bases in Crimea, which they possessed since 1772. 248 years. All right? That by all measures, Crimea is an irredenta that rightfully belongs in Russia. Right? Ethnically, linguistically, historically, part of Russia since 1783. National identity, the popular will of the people, expressed in a 97% vote to join Russia, with 83% voter turnout. All right, I mean that's almost complete. All the Russian blood spilled for Crimea in 4 wars. Right. And then finally, that the 1954 transfer of Crimea to Ukraine was highly bogus and dubious for 5 reasons. All right. So it doesn't change the fact that Russian annexation of Crimea represents extremely limited objectives. Right? They're taking a small, isolated territory annexed to secure Russia's Black Sea military bases. That's very limited objectives. Right? Look at how isolated Crimea is. It's only attached to Ukraine at a little point there, and I think there's a point here. Maybe it's bridged across there. All right, which is entirely different from invading multiple countries in the center of locked in Europe to restore the glory days of the old Russian Soviet Empire. All right. That all of the ex-Russian Soviet territories to be regained, to rebuild their empire, things like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, all right, in all those countries, there's nothing to gain. No resources, limited. I mean, Ukraine's got a little bit, all right, but I mean, it's got some gas and oil. Russia's got tons of that. Why do they need, right? All these have tiny economies, small GDPs, right? A lot of them have really backward. They have corrupt governments and backward economies. Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, right? This is rotting, right? That if Russia were to invade any of these countries to the west, in every single one of them, Russia would be marred in an intractable proxy war in which they would be bled dry with minimal Western effort. All right, minimal sweat off the brow of Western countries. All right, you're going to have committed fighters in those countries to defend their independence, and all you got to do is feed them weapons. All right, and this can be sustained by Western countries almost indefinitely. All right. It's not even going to be on the radar of the average citizen in these countries, right? Especially in America. No one in America is going to be paying attention. Right? All right, that 3 of these countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, are part of NATO. All right, and NATO would kick Russia's ass severely if they tried that. All right. Doesn't change the fact that Russia has multiple vulnerabilities that would preclude any adventuristic military invasion to the west. Russia has a crap military with a long record of proven crap performance throughout their history, except World War II, right, when they faced Nazi genocide. You go back to the Crimean War. Crap performance. Russo-Japanese War. Crap performance. World War I. Afghanistan. Chechnya. They lost the first Chechen War. It took 10 years to get that second Chechen War settled. That's ridiculous. Georgia, right? Russia has a soft underbelly in the Caucasus, through which strategic Russian hydrocarbon pipelines run. All right? And what's been the history? Every time Russia gets involved in some war, Chechnya breaks free, right? 4 times they've broken free. Pipelines running straight through there. And practically, and predictably, Russia would suffer domestic political backlash were it to blunder into stupid, fruitless military adventure. Especially once body bags filled with Russian boys start coming back home, piling up high, all right? The Russian people aren't going to stand for that. They're going to get pissed off. Well, sorry, Charlie, none of the above changes, even if you make your pathetic, desperate, lying, Custer last stands attack, screaming like a flailing banshee. See? Looky here. Focus on this. Shift all your focus here. We finally got something. Don't believe everything else he says. That's what they do. You know they're going to do that. That's crap they pull all the time. This one weak point proves all the other 16 wrong. Yeah, see, look at here. Just look at this one. Focus on this one point. That proves all the rest wrong. Yeah. You watch them do that. Any money, they do that. That's what they do. Friggin' liars. All right. I fully admit that it cannot be claimed that USA support for the Euromaidan pro-West movement caused the Euromaidan revolution. All right. Now, I'm not saying the U.S. caused that revolution, right? The USA stole part. But, one, it is undeniable that the USA has been supporting the pro-West effort to integrate Ukraine with Europe. In fact, I have the full transcript of the December 13th, 2013 speech by Victoria Nuland, who is the Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia, in which, within a short 8-minute speech, she repeatedly refers to this goal of, joining Ukraine with Europe, taken away from Russia, 20 times. All right, so let's take a look at that. So this is her speech, everything in red here. All right, I transcribed this myself. All right, okay. You can watch it yourself here. If you don't believe me. All right, just click on that. All right. So she says, first thing is, all right, it's kind of nondescript here, but she said, okay, Ukrainian-American relationship, so Ukraine-American relationship, and for the people everywhere who care about the future of that great country. Now, when she says future, it looks like I'm extrapolating here. I say European future, but you're going to see like 5-6 times she says European future. All right? So then she's talking about the Euromaidan movement has come to embody the principles. So she's supporting the Euromaidan movement. What is the Euromaidan movement? Integration with Europe. Europe, right here. That's their focus, integrating with Europe. That was their main goal. And then she said, talking about you can't pause on the route to Europe for Ukraine, integration with Europe. And then she's talking about her first trip to the Maidan. That's like the center square in Kiev. When Ukrainians say they are European, that is what they mean. Europe. The people of Ukraine will no longer support any president, this one or a future one, who does not take them to Europe. The European future, Europe. They have chosen, right? Their goals. What's the goal? Europe. Conducting. This is what Victoria Nuland says she's doing. She says she's conducting parallel, coordinated, high-level diplomacy with EU High Representative Cathy Ashton. What is that? That's playing go-between broker with Europe, right? That's direct assistance for Euromaidan to join with Europe, with all the key Ukrainian stakeholders. Now, I highlight stakeholders because this is a typical, politician bullshit term. What is a stakeholder? Is that representative of all Ukrainians? Hell no. She's talking about a handful of key interested people. Who are these guys? Well, they're probably, businessmen, I don't know, right? Hell, they could be friggin' Ukrainian oligarchs, as far as I know. Right? Anyways, so that's a pretty nondescript term, but I don't want to get focused on that. It's Europe's the focus. Ukraine's European future, Europe, and that is where we want to see the president lead his country. That's a U.S. goal, away from Russia and towards Europe, which is flipping a client state. Get Ukraine back into its conversation with Europe and with the International Monetary Fund. All right? Now, a lot of people may think, well, that's worldwide, international. There's like 90 some odd countries involved. Well, this is a European USA creation. This was created with the Bretton Woods Treaty. All right? That's USA and Europe. Right? Reforms that the IMF insists. This is what caused the president of Ukraine to drop the IMF deal and go for the Russia deal, because the reforms here, were pretty much IMF austerity program stuff, right? and that's gonna cause too much pain. So he's like, we'll go for the Russian deal. A deal with the IMF, Europe, signing the association agreement with the EU, Europe, right? Commended the EU for leaving the door open for the association agreement, Europe, and for continuing work with the Ukrainian government and the way forward. Forward to what? Europe. The association agreement is in the near future, right? The people of all ages, of all classes, of all walks of life are taking ownership of their future and coming out into the streets to demand a European future. All of which are preconditions for Ukraine to achieve its European aspirations. Europe, ties with Europe. We've invested $5 billion to assist Ukraine, right? In these goals and whatever, right? European future for their country, Europe. We urge the president. We urge the government. We urge the president to listen to all these voices, to listen to the Ukrainian people, to listen to the Euro made in Europe, and to take Ukraine forward. Where? To fast food and no, to Europe. As we take Ukraine into the future it deserves. That's Europe. And when he said, as we, right? She's talking. She is Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia. This is direct USA support to integrate Ukraine with Europe. Right? Don't tell me we're not trying to get them integrated with Europe. No, that didn't happen. So at the very least, integrating Ukraine with Europe is flipping a client state, right? But more fundamentally, it is increasing the NATO threat, right? You get them attached to Europe, that's going to increase the NATO threat. And two, it can easily be argued that all the USA support for the pro-West movement in the form of diplomacy, guidance, and training for organization, communication, propaganda, protest movements, likely assisted in the coup revolution. But I don't even have to claim that. I mean, this is like obvious stuff. I don't have to claim that. Because once again, whether or not the USA supported the pro-West movement that stole power doesn't even matter. You could say they never supported it, right? They never pushed Ukraine. Doesn't matter because what the fact is, the U.S. is promulgating and pushing and pumping up a bogus perception that Russia's annexation of Crimea means they're going to attack West, right? And conquer countries to rebuild their glorious Russian Soviet Empire, right? That's crackpot stuff, right? But nevertheless, it's fueling a new Cold War and an arms race, as explained above. All right. Now, despite the predictable risk that the liars will attempt a big, pathetically desperate, self-serving lying attack here, I will teach this section anyway because I'm concerned about the role that United States pro-democracy NGOs play in destabilizing and overthrowing governments, which have created chaos, created bloodshed, civil war, failed states that serve then as fertile ground for radical groups like ISIS to come in and take refuge, like in Syria, like in Libya, right? All right, and that's just making more problems, right? That's making more chaos, bloodshed, problems, right? Right? Now, why would you want to do that? Unless you make money from that. All right. U.S. politicians and the mainstream media will tell us that Russia is a scary threat to the USA because they are screwing with our presidential elections, 2016, and then less effectively in 2020. This is, I'm not sure how effective it were. Probably got it like after this, more efforts to block it. It is true that Russia screwed with our elections. You can't deny that. But no nation screws with other nations' elections and governments more than the USA. Do you think the Americans see that? No, USA don't do anything like that. We only do good. With our long history of destabilization or overthrow of governments. And in fact, the U.S. has political NGOs operating in both Russia and Ukraine right now. U.S. NGOs have been operating in Ukraine at least as far back as the 2004 Orange Revolution. And the USA has spent $5 billion. Victoria Nuland said this herself, to support pro-West organizations which overthrew the Ukrainian government and seized power. And this resulted in the increased threat of Ukraine joining NATO. Pro-West government coming into power in Ukraine. The U.S. money is direct U.S. threat to Russia. And do you think the U.S. government gave away $5 billion for no reason? We just feel like being generous today. Here's a gift for no reason. You think there wasn't any communication? You think that there wasn't any guidance or advice, right? Any planning assistance, any diplomatic assistance? I showed you how Nuland is directly interfacing with the EU high, whatever person that was, high representative. Okay. Where was I here? All right. And you think there weren't any conditions attached? I mean, how you spend that money. I admit I have no evidence for this, okay? I mean, this is just common sense, though. But come on, right? The U.S. wasn't just tossing out Santa Claus money, all right? It's like, hey, it's Christmas, right? Hey, here's Uncle Sam Santa. Hey, right, ho, 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 free money, ho, ho, ho. Yeah, Merry Christmas. Yeah, it's all Santa crap, and this gift giving is the paganization of Christmas. I mean, this is our Christmas tradition, our Christmas culture, right? It's all paganization of Christianity. All right. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, you're a Grinch. You're like that Dr. Seuss character." All right. Okay. So U.S. NGOs are de facto direct threats, right? But don't forget. So they're de facto in reality, right? A lot of people say, "Oh, right." But don't forget the 16 times we absolutely directly jammed Russia with attacks and threats. Right? And here's the 16 times. I'm not going to go through this long list. All right. I've gone through it before. If you've forgotten, you can go ahead and read it again. Just pause and read this again. Right? So here's an expected attack. Right? And I know the liars are going to attack. Why? Because they're self-serving. They're incorrigible, self-serving little rats. Right? Of the USA 17 attacks on Russia, the lies will shift all focus onto the single weak item: U.S. assistance to pro-West movement in Ukraine, right? Partially direct, but also partially through NGOs, right? Oh, those are do-gooder organizations, which threaten both, one, flipping a client state from Russia, and two, increasing the NATO threat to Russia, all right? But, one, there's no denying that the USA pushed for integration of Ukraine with Europe and supported the pro-West Euro-Maiden group that conducted the revolution through which they stole power. There is no denying that the USA spent $5 billion to help Ukraine integrate with Europe. That's flipping a client state. There's no denying that the USA government has close communication with the Euro-Maiden group that stole power. I mean, they're giving them the money, but here's a picture. Here are the Euro-Maiden leaders 2 weeks before they stole power. Right? This is February 6th. They stole power right around February 20th or so. Here's Victoria Nuland meeting with the pro-West leaders, the Euro-Maiden leaders, during the height of the Euro-Maiden revolt. This is when they're rioting in the streets. And 2 weeks before they seized power. Right? These are the guys here. Right? And I'm saying, okay, they had communicated. What do you think? What did they talk about? Right? Oh, hey, did you guys have a good New Year's? Right? Hoping you didn't drink too much vodka. Right? Or, they talked about, here's Victoria Nuland. Hey, Klitschko. This guy's Klitschko here. He's a heavyweight contender boxer. Right? Right? Hey, I'm a big fan of yours. I've been following you for years. Right? You're a good boxer. Boy, Ukraine has a whole bunch of good boxers. You got that Lomachenko dude, right? Man, right? What do they call him? They call him the Matrix, right? And they got Triple G. You guys have all sorts of good boxers, right? What is it? Is it something they're putting in the water over there, right? My joke is no. It's a crap Ukrainian economy, right? There's nothing else for them to do over there because their economy's so crap, so they're good boxers. It's kind of like Ireland. It's got such a crap economy that, there's nothing else for them to do, so they're damn good at rock and roll and, good boxers, right? Okay. All right, so here's Victoria. She's married to this guy, Robert Kagan, right? Robert Kagan is a hardcore interventionist, neoconservative, right? He's a co-founder of the Project for a New American Century. America's going to rule next century, which promotes expansion of American dominance, aggressive military invasion of foreign countries to instill fear, awe, and preemptive attacks, and to overthrow foreign governments. Here's an example. Here's a Project for New American Century fellow, this guy here. He said, quote, "We have no choice but to reinstill within our foes and friends the fear that attaches to any great power. We got to scare the crap out of them," right? Yeah, that's it. That's good. Let's go invade Iraq. That'll scare them. That'll pacify them. Oh, hell. You go invade an oil-rich country. There's nothing more you can do to strategically help Al-Qaeda, right? And fuel the terrorist movement. Bunch of dumbasses, right? And these guys, I can just imagine these guys, right? They think they're so tough. Yeah, we're such tough guys, right? We could go send, brave U.S. men and women to die, right? Fight and die. Yeah, we're so tough. Of course, they're friggin' draft dodging cowards, right? None of these guys served in the military. Right? Bunch of pathetic cowards here, right? I mean, I look at this guy. He just makes me sick. His fat little face, right? He's like, "Hey, Kagan, you ever heard of Jenny Craig?" Right? Eat more salad or something, you ever heard of Amazon? Why don't you go buy a Stairmaster or something like that, right? All right. There is no denying that integrating Ukraine with Europe would be flipping a client state. You can't deny that. And would increase the risk of Ukraine joining NATO. There is no denying that the U.S. pro-democracy NGOs have been operating in Ukraine since at least as far back as the 2004 Orange Revolution. But the liars will say, oh, these pro-democracy NGOs are simply do-gooders. They're only doing good in the world, right? They're like CARE International. They're like Partners in Health. They're like Cure Violence, Mercy Corps, Handicap International, right? They're those, really bleeding heart, liberal, like, whatever. My joke was, save the gay whales, whatever, all right, so, I said, really? Let's take a look at these so-called pro-democracy NGOs, all right? And we're going to examine the first one, the granddaddy of them all here, the National Endowment for Democracy, co-founded by this guy, Alan Weinstein, all right? So I say here, role of U.S. pro-democracy NGOs. NGO stands for non-government organization, and I put in quotes non-government because, they're really a secret. They openly publish on their website. Let's look at India. That 90% of its budget comes from the U.S. government. How non-government is that? My ass, right? I want to teach about U.S. pro-democracy NGOs, even though I fully expect a big lying attack here. But I'll gladly take the lying attacks, right? Because I'm concerned about the role these NGOs can play in a method called soft power. This is kind of the new thing, how to overthrow governments with soft power, which is the use of not of military force, not of military coup, right? A rebel opposition military force, but the use of popular street protests by the public to destabilize and overthrow governments, which does not bring democracy and peace, but rather the opposite has happened, right? You've had, it's brought internecine conflict, civil war, massive killing and destruction, right? Breakdown in civil society and the economy, the rise of warring factions led by warlords, the fragmentation of the country into failed states, the fostering of radical groups and the creation of fertile ground for radical groups like ISIS to take refuge or attempt to make a stay, which increases the terrorist threat because they now have direct access to significant resources, oil or revenues. All right. Now, people just say, "Oh, bullshit." They never. Well, that happened in Libya. That happened in Syria. So shut up. They're crazy. They're just doing good in the world. USA de facto direct support through United States NGOs, which support the Euromaidan pro-West movement, have been operating in Ukraine since the 2004 revolution. Historically, these pro-democracy NGOs, like the National Endowment for Democracy, were originally formed to replace the CIA's government destabilization and overthrow operations, right? Which began to receive too much bad public exposure and backlash. Like in the 70s, 80s, started getting too well known. So they backed off and they started using these, right? And overthrow, okay. The co-founder of the National Endowment for Democracy, this guy right here, and the National Endowment for Democracy was the first prototype pro-democracy NGO, Alan Weinstein, openly admitted this. He said, quote, "A lot of what we, the NED, do today was done covertly, secretly by 25 years ago by the CIA. The biggest difference is that when such activities are done overtly, out in the open, the flat potential is close to zero. Openness is its own protection. This is no less government destabilization through the organizing and growing of opposition groups and protest movements that historically have exploded into violence and overthrown governments," right? And more recently, throughout North Africa during the Arab Spring, Syria, and now in Ukraine. Traditionally, the CIA conducted these overthrows, but now the best way is through soft power, right? Just get the people all protesting, creating, a threat of government shutdown, and you can take down the government. So I say here, who does this guy look like? And I'm just kind of joking here, but you look at this guy. Who does he look like? Think of a TV show, even a cartoon. All right. To me, this guy looks like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, right? This wrinkly old, osteoporosis type of guy with all hunched over, like sitting behind a big wooden desk, right, in his big office by himself, wringing his hands, wringing his fingers, right, and speaking in a Peter Lorre type voice, like, what sneaky crap can we do now? Hey, Rick, you want to buy some letters of transit? Anyways, all right. By the way, the NED is a non-government organization that receives over 90% of its annual budget from the U.S. government. So how non-government is that? I mean, that's bullshit. It's smoke right there, right? This is a government organization made to look like it's private, right? The other 90% it receives from corporations and rich donors. I mean, just look at this list of donors, all these rich fat cats and corporations, right? So here's the idea. Oh, all the liars are going to say, no, it's pro-democracy. They're doing good in the world. They're these goody-goody. They're just like, save the gay whales, right? Right? Or are they that? Or are they wolves in sheep's clothing, right? I mean, right here, just look at, it's not non-government, right? That's smoke screen there. In 2012, Putin signed into law a requirement that foreign NGOs, there are U.S. NGOs conducting political activity inside Russia, they got to submit quarterly reports on their activities and attach a foreign agent disclosure to all their publications. I say it propaganda, right? Because it freaking probably is, right? So, did Putin kick him out? No, he didn't kick him out. But he said, you got to report to the government what you guys are doing, right? And you got to attach onto whatever you say that, okay, what is this like? This is like attaching to a box of cigarettes, right? Surgeon General's warning, right? It can cause cancer, right? Now, right? What if I say USA with a question? What if there were Russian political activity NGOs operating in USA? Americans would go bonkers. They go ape shit, right? What the hell, right? Let's go kill some Ruskies. So I have concerns about the problems and conflicts that can be created by U.S. pro-democracy NGOs, right? I think I got legitimate concerns, and I think I got concerns for good reasons. There's bad record here, right? It's not all good. They don't do all good. Some bad things can come of it. Go ahead and attack then. Blah, blah, blah. It's all make-believe, right? It's all tall tale. It's fairy tale. It's unbelievable. It's conspiracy theory. It's unreal. It's debatable, right? Right? This is the attack they're going to come up with. All they're going to have is one-word reality, baseless bullshit, right? Right? It's all based on one word. See, you know why I don't believe it? Because I don't say unbelievable. That's my argument, unbelievable. That's my facts, unbelievable. Unlike you, I thoroughly studied U.S. Conducted coups. Unlike you, I've read research on U.S. pro-democracy NGOs. The typical person doesn't do research worth jack. They don't bother. Too damn lazy, right? The typical person doesn't know jack shit about it, right? And they don't retain jack. The average person listening to this, they've forgotten everything I said already. It's row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. La-di-da, right? It all flows into the big sea of forgetfulness. Nothing retained, right? Nothing in your head except what's being passed right in front of your face. Unbelievable. The typical person, okay, yeah. So I simply want more scrutiny on these NGOs. I just, hope people, are always looking to see, well, what the hell are these guys doing, right? To prevent conflict and chaos for the sake of goodness. Now, is that the goal of the average American? Hell no, right? The masses of self-serving Americans only want to believe the shit that makes them feel good about themselves, right? And that's what defines them. That's what drives them. There was a large body of research on U.S. pro-democracy NGOs and the soft power. If you haven't studied like I have, well, shut the F up. All right? I'm just serious. Just shut up. Right? But that's not going to happen. All right, so what I want to show you now is a list of classic CIA methods of destabilizing and overthrowing a government. From my research, I just compiled this stuff from the top of my head, right? But I studied in detail the Iran coup, the Guatemala coup, the Venezuelan coup, and every damn one is the same. And there's other things we'll talk about here more than themselves, right? So typical thing they do. Oh, by the way, if it's in yellow, NGOs can and do perform these. If it's in gray, well, this is going to be more U.S. military or U.S. government, right? State Department stuff, right? So, but if you look at it, almost all of it's yellow. They can do just about everything here. Only a few things they don't do. We'll cover them. So first thing they do is they network into key groups to gain their support, or at least gain the support for key elements within the group. For example, during the Venezuelan coup, they didn't get the support of the military. They gained the support of only a small element of guys who would push the coup. Right? All right. So then you network into opposition political parties or groups. Right? One example is the lying buildup to invade Iraq. Right? What did the Bush administration do? They networked into the Iraqi National Congress with that lying, convicted bank fraud, Chalabi, right? Who's a known fabricator, right? And they got mobile biological labs, right? We know they got mobile biological labs. Why? Because one guy told us. Chalabi, right? That's your evidence. Fuck. All right, so they'll network into the military, obvious. They'll network into police, religious leaders. These are all examples, for example, right? Guatemala, Iran here, right? Religious leaders. It's funny, they networked into religious leaders, and then the CIA conducted attacks on these religious leaders and blamed it upon Mossadegh, right? All right, labor unions, right? That if you disbelieve that, the whole bullshit, read Dr. Wilbur, the planner, the chief planner for this Ajax operation. Was it Ajax? Yeah. Well, the CIA planned to overthrow, the Iranian government, right? That was Ajax, right? Yeah. Right. Chief planner. He wrote the official history. Right. Just read his declassified document. Right. Right. Network into the religious leaders and blow them up, and they get other religious leaders to point the finger at Mossadegh. Scare the rest of them and say, he's a communist, he's going to bring him to communism. Labor unions, right? They all network labor unions. Any disenfranchised group. Like the Iraqi National Congress, right? They're the opposition party in exile, kicked out of the country. Recruit leaders favorable to your interests and select a central opposition leader. Then you want to train your leaders in organizing, group building, and communication propaganda, right? When did they do this? Right? They do this all the time. But they did this with Arab Spring. They recruited guys, right? Brought them to the U.S., gave them training in the U.S., and sent them back there, right, to help manufacture those protest movements. And then you provide the material resources needed to do this. You organize an opposition protest movement. You plan street protests and civil disobedience. All right, is this hard to do? Hell, this was done in the 1960s in the USA, and it was very effective, right? The whole Martin Luther King thing, right? The whole, he used Gandhi's method of passive resistance. It turned out to be effective. Build public outrage against the government with false information, propaganda. Man, this is done at every damn coup, right? Use fear-mongering, right? Fear-mongering always works. Buy off the press and spread propaganda, or start your own press. I mean, just read Dr. Wilbur's. He's talking about the money spent to buy off the press, right? To buy off key representatives, right? Today, right, you can start your press easy with just create a website, right? Start it with social media. You want to destabilize the economy. The biggest thing that'll turn off people to a president trying to get reelected is a bad economy, right? If anything's going to get him kicked out of office, that will, right? So that's what you do. You whack the economy. Great way is naval blockade. Blockade all shipping in and out. Kill their commerce. You kill their economy. Total embargo upon, their key resource, oil or something like that. No oil exports out of whatever. You have sanctions to whack their economy. Then a classic thing done is you sabotage key infrastructure, right? Man, you try to, another thing I studied was Operation Mongoose, Cuba, to overthrow Castro, right? They're sabotaging everything, transportation, communication, and in all these you sabotage their finance, right? That's one thing they did in Guatemala, for example. They did that also in Iran, but in Guatemala they sabotage their ability to get loans, for the government to get loans. Then you occupy government buildings to threaten government shutdown. That was done in Ukraine, in Kiev, right? Strategic worker strikes, right? You got to hit the key workers, right? It's not plumbers, it's not carpenter, right? Key workers to shut down the whole economy are in key nodes. Dock workers, longshoremen, or truck drivers, teamsters, right? Then you pass counterfeit. This was done in the Iran coup. Just read Dr. Wilbur's document. Yeah. CIA, we can print counterfeit money, and then we'll pass it, and then we'll blame it on Mossadegh, and we'll say that's the cause for the destruction of the economy. The real cause was here, right? That's how they destroyed the economy. But listen, the bad economy is due to, right? He's passing counterfeit money, which the CIA printed. All right. destabilize the government, right? Create opposition and discontent. You could do that. Protest movements. Chief means use the press, use propaganda, communication, right? Destroy the economy, fear-mongering, or on ties with communists. That was one of the things, right? To scare who? The religious leaders, right? Why? Because communists are friggin' atheists. Attempt government shutdown, right? And the chief tools are all fear, anger, hatred, resentment towards, right? Build it up against the government, and especially against the key leader like Mossadegh, or popular wave, social reinforcement, right? This works. Man, this works in the U.S. All you got to do is create a wave. And all it is, oh, that's real because everyone's saying so. You think that doesn't work? I'm not stupid enough. They all fall for that. Organized street protest demonstrations, civil disobedience, right? They get out of hand and require repressive force. If they get out of hand, all right, and they use repressive force, that explodes. This is the powder keg right here. All right. Create the conditions for inciting incident, a detonator, to occur, or manufacture a detonator. Attacks against the people, right? So one example is you have the Euromaidan protests, right? They start seizing government buildings in Kiev, right? Not in some, smaller city, right? This is the main capital city of the country. They're taking government buildings, threatening government shutdown. Plus, there were some violent protesters. So police respond to the violent crackdown, results in a big, wave of violence. There's 112 protesters. I don't know, both sides maybe, but more Euromaidan, I'm sure. Protesters killed. 18 police officers killed. All right, the killing sparks the revolution. So this is the powder keg. This is what blows up. And then you overthrow the government. The government flees for their life. All right. And the new government comes in. The Euromaidan government comes in, takes power. Plus, there was some snipers involved, right? I don't know the exact details here, but whenever I know they're rooftop snipers, right? Whenever there's rooftop snipers, I'm immediately, suspicious of this, right? Because everyone's gonna say, "Well, that's the government. The government's killing them." Well, maybe it is, but maybe it's the damn coup plotters doing it, right? Like for example, in the Venezuelan coup, I think it's super high probability that it was a coup plotters. They're plotting this coup for many months. They're getting a lot of U.S. support here. They're getting money, right? And then they have a sniper on the roof, starts killing a bunch of protesters in the street, right? And they immediately point the finger at the government and they launch the coup. They use that to launch a coup. I'm saying they probably did that themselves to initiate, to kick off the coup. Right? To get an excuse to kick off the coup. More than likely. Now, do I have proof? No, I don't have proof. But this is just common sense. Any idiot can figure this out. Right? But the real idiot is going to say, what's conspiracy theory? You can't do that. You can't have people faking to be... Oh, bullshit. You know how easy that is to do that? So whenever the government is accused of killing protesters by hidden rooftop snipers, I believe it is just as likely that the coup plotters did the killing to ignite the coup, especially when the coup immediately follows, right? That is just too convenient and a typical coup initiation methods. But I have no proof in Ukraine, so okay, I'll leave it as that. I got no proof, right? They're going to use fear-mongering, which always works to move the masses. I mean, just look at wars. I mean, there's far more wars than this, but here's just a sample of wars. All right, Civil War. Oh, the South is running around. They're going to free the slaves. They're going to free the slaves. Right? Bullshit. There's no bill on the table. There's no movement in Congress to free this. Right? You got to get an amendment to the Constitution. Right? Nothing is being done to free the slaves. Bullshit. Right? Gulf of Tonkin. Right? We're going to attack you. They spread fear both sides. We're going to attack you. We're going to invade you. We're going to attack you. We're going to move to the north. All right? Scaring the crap out of the North Vietnamese to set them up. Right? And then to set up the Americans like, oh, the communists are planning some aggressive move here. Expect to move by the communists. Right? Then you create an incident. Right? Then they both see it exactly the opposite way. Then you get a war. Iraq War Resolution. Oh, WMD, it's going to be so much worse than, 9/11. You think 9/11 was bad? As a walk in the park, right? Stroll through, Sunday afternoon compared to what's going to happen, right? Right? They're going to have a nuclear weapon. They're going to blow away a whole city. There's going to be a mushroom cloud for a smoking gun, right? Provide money to conduct all the above. All right. So all of these classic methods, and these are just classic, run-of-the-mill methods used by the USA to overthrow governments. Classic CIA methods for destabilizing and overthrowing governments. The standard CIA playbook. There is very little NGOs can't do. Only the ones in gray here. The key difference is NGOs do the very same thing out in the open, under the guise of democracy building, which sounds good and benign, and if you're a simpleton moron, oh, they're just doing good. They're do-gooders, right? They're little angels. Therefore, as stated by Alan Weinstein, NGOs can overthrow governments with flat potential close to zero. There's no bad press. There's no suspicion. No accusations of covert, secret CIA overthrow, right? Now, I'm fully aware that the liars will make a custard last stand attack here because they think it's vulnerable. They'll shift all focus on this pro-democracy, right? They'll make a big attack, try to shift all focus, and try to display, right? Let's see here. They'll shift all focus to displace all else from mind, and people aren't going to remember crap to begin with. Then they'll say that this characterizes all of it, which people don't remember any of it, right? They'll say, it's all bullshit. You can disbelieve it all. From now on until the end of eternity, you can disbelieve everything he's got to say. Right? That's final proof. Game over. End of story. That's what they're going to try to do. You watch. I swear, that's what liars will try to do. I knowingly risk this to draw attention to these so-called pro-democracy U.S. NGOs because of all the turmoil, conflict, and destabilization they can create. So I'll take the risk. I'll gladly risk the predictable attacks because I believe there must be much more attention and scrutiny on the role of these so-called pro-democracy NGOs in fueling instability and conflict throughout the world, which can have destabilizing bad effects, cause a lot of people to suffer. All right, so another thing I want to touch upon, because I know that if I don't say anything about this, they're gonna worm a distorted attack here, right? So it's the Donbass civil war in eastern part of Ukraine. Here's the Donbass, right, where there's kind of conflict going on there, right? Which is like right here, a little pocket right there, right? It's not very big. It's in the east there, right? And it's being hyped much less than Crimea annexation, but it's also likewise a gross distortion and exaggeration. All right, so 2 weeks after the pro-Rus revolution, remember the revolution was in February, about February 20th to 23rd or so, right? 2 weeks after that, a pro-Russian group in the East essentially did the exact same thing they did in the West, right? Copied the Euro-Maidan protest tactics and started seizing government buildings in Donetsk, Luhansk, and whatever that is, Kharkov, right? Then they declared independence from Ukraine, right? So they're doing the exact same thing, but now it's pro-Russian, not pro-European, right? A civil war then ensued in which Russia gave support to pro-Russian rebels, the pro-Russian guys here, right? Putin said the Russian troops that were going over there were volunteers and that he has nothing to do with it, which I believe is obviously bogus because, even if he didn't actively support it, he could have patted him on the back, gave him a wink and nod, right? But at the very least, he could have stopped him, but he didn't, right? So you could say Putin's behind this. He is at least tacitly supporting it at the very least, but the thing about it is Russia trying to conquer Ukraine to recreate their empire? Oh, hell no, right? There's nowhere close to that, right? Nowhere close. I think Putin is stabbing a penknife in the side of Ukraine, right? A little skinny knife, twisting it every now and then and saying, hey, Don't screw with our gas pipeline, right? The Blue Stream, here's a Blue Stream. There's a Brotherhood, here's a Soyuz, right? Cuts across Ukraine right there. Cuts a corner there, right? Then it goes into the Black Sea, right? Don't screw with our pipeline, right? Or more, even more, it said don't join NATO. That's a bigger threat. In any event, Putin is fighting a low-intensity proxy war, which is easy so long as you have committed fighters. If you got some pro-Russian guys here who are pretty serious about, right? All you gotta do is feed them some weapons, and they'll do the fighting, right? They'll do all the killing, the dying, the shedding of blood, and you got no problem here back in Russia, right? So it's easy so long as you have committed fighters, and it will stay below the threshold of a major Western military response. Why? A major offensive by Russia in Ukraine will be problematic. The U.S. will fight a proxy war, and really we're fighting it already. Right? Started already with December 2017. Trump authorized weapons aid to Ukraine. And a major offensive will trap Russia in a quagmire. I mean, this is very basic in general. I'll give you a much more detailed analysis later on when we get to a discussion of the military. This is bare bones, okay? A major offensive will trap Russia in a quagmire. Russia will have to control territory. Ukraine is a large territory. It's going to have to control a lot of territory, right? And that's going to make for a static defense, right? They'd have to control the key population centers. And that, combined with long lines of communication, will increase vulnerability. It'll make it more reactive. They'll lose the initiative, right? These guerrilla hit-and-run attacks can gain initiative. And you know what? It'd be easy for the U.S. to support these guerrilla hit-and-run attacks, right? All they got to do is supply communication, maybe some sat phones with encrypted sat phones, and they'll provide satellite data, when the convoys are running, right? They can tell them the best locations to set up ambushes and so forth, whatever. All right, they can easily help these guerrilla hit and run attacks, right? Right, and then provide the weapons and so forth. Russia's military weakness, vulnerabilities, which I talked about already. I'll talk more about the military weakness in detail in the next section, right? Russia's interior vulnerability. We talked about Chechnya, right? Here's Chechnya. It's a little province right there, right? This whole area is Islamic, right? They call themselves the Pan Caucasus Emirates here. That was formed during the Second Chechen War, that 10-year war, right? Right. Well, pipelines run right through there, right? There's a gas pipeline leading from Shah Deniz, tapping into here, right around there, right near the Blue Stream, somewhere around here. And I'm guessing it's around the Blue Stream. I know it taps into the Black Sea, right around there. Let's see here. Potential political vulnerability due to a long, costly, unpopular war. Even internal instability. For example, protest movements that can blow up in Putin's face, right? Has that happened before? Right? Right? Yeah. Right? Look at how many wars Russia had, revolutions because of the wars. Right? Finally, let's just think, okay, Russo-Japanese War. Right? They perform like crap. They lose. Revolution. World War I. Perform like crap. Right? Revolution. Right? Finally, in essence, the USA supported a pro-West rebellion in the West, right? So we supported the pro-West rebellion in the West, right? We supported the pro-West groups. Now Putin's supporting the pro-Russian rebellion in these, the pro-Russian groups, right? So you can say, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is when we support the pro-West, we call it freedom, right? When Russia supports the pro-Russian groups, we call that invasion, and aggressive expansion, and attempt to rebuild the glorious Russian Empire of old. Like, what? I'm serious, that's what they're saying. And that's fueling a new Cold War. I mean, you can laugh at that, but that's what they're saying. And that's believed. It's like amazing. All right, conclusion. Right, so the liars will try to shift all focus onto this attack, right? And then use it. Oh, you can forget all else. Forget this proves it all wrong. That's typical lying method, right? Right? This is the end all, beat all, right? Game over, right? End of story, right? He's proven false forever. Everything he said in the past and in the future. Yeah, blanket statement to cover everything. Totally unrelated. Perhaps the key event that is fueling the USA-driven Cold War with Russia was Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. More specifically, it is a USA's portrayal of Crimean annexation that is fueling the new Cold War, as evidenced in American perceptions. Well, what are American perceptions? Right, Russian annexation of Crimea was a rapacious act of naked aggression and evidence of their ambition to conquer European nations to rebuild the glorious days of the old Russian Soviet Empire. Right? To the Russians, their annexation of Crimea was necessitated and forced upon them, right, through the illegal coup in Ukraine, through which a pro-Western Euromaidan group stole power. Right? It was a revolution. It was a coup. The increased threat of Ukraine joining NATO now that a pro-West government stole power. The threatened loss of Russia's military bases in Crimea in Ukraine, if Ukraine were to join NATO. The fact that Crimea is the most strategic point in the Black Sea, home to a number of Russian military bases that protect its maritime commerce, its hydrocarbon pipelines, and its home territory. Now, a key element of the Russian perspective, which, is not going to be shared by Americans because they're not going to know squat about it, is the fact that Crimea is an irredenta which in many ways rightfully belongs inside Russia. Historically, Crimea has been part of Russia since 1783, and Russia has had military bases in Crimea since 1772. That's almost 248 years. Ethnically, there are over four times more Russians in Crimea than in Ukrainians. Right? Politically, Crimea has made multiple attempts at independence from Ukraine, all of which were squashed by Ukraine. Linguistically, roughly 8 times more Crimean people speak Russian than Ukrainian. All of the Russian blood spilled for Crimea over 4 wars: Russo-Turkish War, Crimean War, World War I, World War II. The popular will of the people, as expressed in 3 overwhelming votes in 3 referendums. There was a 1991 vote for Crimean independence from Ukraine. 92.3% voted for that. In 94, 78% voted for increased Ukrainian autonomy. 83% voted for dual Russian-Ukrainian citizenship. That's inching towards Russia. That's connecting with Russia. That's moving towards Russia. And then 78% voted for independent Crimean laws. Now, what it said in the ballot was the edicts of the president be made into edicts of the Crimean president be made. What is that? That's independent Crimean law. That's the same thing. They're making their own laws. Now, not obeying the nation's law or having independent laws is de facto independence. So this is a move towards independence, right? Examples, U.S. history, the 1832 South Carolina crisis. They say, oh, we're not going to pay this tariff. I mean, it's all about the tariffs, right? Which is their economy, right? And then Andrew Jackson and Southern says, no, I don't think so, right? I'm going to whack you with military force if you do, right? South Carolina prepared for a military attack, prepared the Port of Charleston, right? The key funnel node for their economy. The U.S. Civil War and the moral tariff, same thing, right? It was about tariff. It was about politics. It was about legislative power, which is about politics, which shifted against the South. Irrevocably, that's a good word. That'll work, right? By 1850, the writing was on the wall. The Texas Rebellion and Mexico's April 6, 1830 laws. So I swear, most historians are absolute simpletons. They cannot see what the hell's going on. All right? They say the Texas Revolution started in 1835. Oh, bullshit! It started in April 6, 1830, when Mexico passed laws. A lot of these laws were already in the writing. For example, Um, the law against slavery. Mexico always had law against slavery. They only allowed Texans to have slavery, but it was contingent upon a short period of time. And they said by 1830 it's going to be canceled, right? So it's going up. By law, it was going up. They just made this law. You know what this is like? This is like in the Constitution. There's a fugitive slave clause, right? And then, right, in 1850, part of the 1850 Compromise, they passed the Fugitive Slave Act to beef that up. Right? That's all this was. The law's on the books already. No slaves, right? And it says no more immigration from America, and you got to pay taxes. The Texans weren't paying taxes, right? Oh hell, we're not doing any of that. So they rebelled. Mexico tried to enforce it in like 1831 or so, right? Texans won, so they tried again in 1835, and that kicked off the war. So really, this was a continuation of the same rebellion that started here, right? Had to do with laws, right? That's breaking away. That's independence. Now, I say this. If an individual does not obey laws, that's a crime, right? But if a whole people don't obey laws, that's sedition. That's rebellion. That's revolution, right? Now, 2014, 97% voted for Crimea to join Russia, with an 83% voter turnout. That's pretty damn high. All right. And to begin with, don't forget that the transfer of Crimea to Ukraine back in 1954 was highly dubious for 5 reasons. Now, I'm willing to bet no one remembers the 5 reasons. Right? So what? The USA's crackpot view that Russia's annexation of Crimea is proof of their ambition to attack nations to the west to rebuild their glorious old Russian Empire is based upon the premise that Russia was initiating. That is total bullshit. Russia did not initiate. Right? Russia was reacting defensively after being jammed with the increased threat of NATO expansion into Ukraine and Crimea, with the subsequent loss of the military bases in Crimea. Thus, Russia wasn't trying to gain something. Russia was trying not to lose their military bases in the key strategic point in the Black Sea. All right, I showed you how Crimea is, blatantly and obviously the most strategic point in the Black Sea for simple geological reasons, or geographical reasons, not geological. The USA's crackpot view that Russia's annexation of Crimea is proof of their ambition to attack nations to the west to rebuild their glorious old empire is based upon the premise that Russia is expanding, but that is total bullshit. Russia's not expanding. Russia's contracting. Russia's being jammed back on every front in the West, in the Middle East. Right? I showed you how, man, all this is part of NATO now. Right? All that is Ukraine. Ukraine has a pro-Russian, pro-Western government and annual exercises with NATO. Right? And we're cutting to Belarus now. What does Russia have left? Right? They're being squeezed everywhere. Finland has exercises with NATO. Sweden. In the Middle East, all they got is part of Syria. So let's go through this, right? Russia's being squeezed smaller and smaller. All Russia has left in the West is Belarus. And the U.S. is cutting into that now. All it has left in the Middle East is Syria. But that's been cut into pieces, with only about half allied with Russia still, right? All that has left in the Caucasus are 2 provinces within Georgia, pro-Russian Abkhazia and South Ossetia, right? Now, Russia hasn't annexed these, and they're not worth anything, and there's no reason, right? All it's going to do is get, accused of being, expansionist, right? Right? But what Russia did is that, they're trying to guarantee their independence within Georgia. So, okay, you stay in Georgia, but, we'll help you stay independent. And Armenia, right? What is Armenia? Armenia is nothing. No resources, small crap economy, right? And it recently could not protect Armenia from loss of territory to Turkish-backed Azerbaijan. Well, they got money. They got oil and gas. Right? They got Turkish help. Russia only has slim pickings of only a few throwaway scraps. right? So Russia recently negotiated peace between the outbreak of violence between Azerbaijan and Armenia, right? And then, Armenia lost, so the Armenians are all pissed off, right? But, yeah, so Russia couldn't help them. The USA's crackpot view that Russia's annexation of Crimea is proof of their ambition to attack nations to the west to rebuild their glorious old empire is bullshit, because it was entirely bloodless and based upon the overwhelming popular will of the people expressed in a referendum. But it was a referendum, I gotta admit that it was a referendum that required Russian military occupation in order to happen. That's the unkosher part. That's the part that says, oh, Russian, aggressive military expansion. Yeah, bloodless popular vote there. But this indigenously supported bloodless annexation is entirely different from a bloody, nasty invasion into European countries to the west, none of which are worth taking until you get as far west as Poland, and all of which Russia would likely be bogged down in a long, bloody proxy war, and many of which are part of NATO. The two are so different that Russia's annexation of Crimea is zero indication that Russia intends to invade countries to the west to remake their glorious Russian Soviet Empire. There is no comparison. There's no correlation. It is just simple-minded whack job lunacy. All the whackheads. Oh yeah, that means they're going to go try to conquer Europe to rebuild, right? Yeah, bullshit. The USA is concocting this bogus perception of Russia as an avaricious aggressor hell-bent on territory expansion to rebuild his glorious empire, when in fact the USA has been the aggressor, attacking and threatening Russia 17 times, including multiple nuclear threats, multiple NATO threats, multiple attacks on the Russian gas pipelines. But U.S. politicians and the U.S. mainstream media, which I hate, because they're friggin' liars, say nothing about these serious attacks. Nothing. Right? They say nothing about this. The USA attacks and threats against Russia have been an incessant and unrelenting pattern of aggression, but most Americans would not see it that way due to their self-serving, dishonest natures. They just want to beat their chest and chant, USA, 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 because that's what makes them feel good about themselves, right? And the primary human drive is to please the self. They want to just wave their flag and feel good. Yeah, we're the best, we're the biggest, and we're the baddest, and we're good. We're the guys in white hats, white horses, and we shoot silver bullets, kill werewolves, right? And yeah, we have friends we call Tonto. You know that means stupid fool in Spanish. I'm just kidding. All right, that's taking it too far. All right, but more than that, the U.S. aggressions have been used to jam Russia with threats, forcing them to react defensively, which we then portray as dangerous acts of aggression. These are classic get you. They play these games all the time, right? They'll play. Fuck, right? They play these games on me so many times, right? Whacking my car, right? Does anyone remember? I taught exactly how they did it. No one remembers. Oh, that's conspiracy theory. You're crazy. That's exactly what they want, you damn fools, right? He's crazy. He's a false accuser. Don't believe him. That's exactly what they want. And it's going to work. Why? Because people are simpletons. Right? They won't retain any facts. They won't retain any knowledge. They won't figure anything out. They won't see squat. They'll get played all the time. For example, the CIA has a big bag of dirty games and tricks to manufacture incidents while controlling public perceptions. I taught you so many wars how it was done. And I know you don't remember anything. Although U.S. politicians and the mainstream media will say nothing of the U.S. 17 serious attacks upon Russia, they go bonkers berserk over Russia's interference in our 2016 election. But given the combination of, one, the U.S. unrelenting chain of 17 attacks upon Russia, and two, Hillary's Cold Warrior, Russia bashing, stance going into the 2016 election, Russia's meddling in our 2016 election can easily be viewed as being defensive, as a desperate attempt not to be screwed with by the USA once again, to add to that long list of 17 times. They don't want another 18th or 19th or 20th, right? Finally, never forget the undeniable historical fact that the USA has always been and still is the consummate warmonger nation in the world, right? Man, I showed you a simple, undeniable list of all our wars, right? I showed you so many cases of how we start wars, how we manufacture wars using clever devices to cook up incidents, manufacture some incident to manipulate the American Congress and public, right? This is the reality, not the baseless shit Americans want to believe to make themselves feel good, right? Oh, USA only do good. We be the good guys. They be the bad guys. We wear white hats, right? Once again, the USA is starting another war, this time a Cold War. Russia's not starting it. Russia's not instigating and initiating. The U.S. is instigating. 17 times the USA has jammed Russia with attacks and threats, including backing the Euromaidan group, which conducted the revolution in Ukraine and stole power, increasing the threat of NATO membership, which threatened Russia's military base in Crimea. Right? That forced Russia to return Crimea in irredenta back to Russia. Return. Right? Everything says, right, Crimea rightfully belongs in Russia. Historically, for over 200 years, it was in Russia. 230 some odd years, right? 240 years, bases in Russia, in Crimea. USA is taking aggressive action, forcing Russia to scramble to hang on to strategic bases, then portraying that as expansionism. Right? The U.S. is playing a classic get you game, which the masses never follow and thus fall for every single time, even though the CIA plays these games thousands of times to control perceptions of the masses. They'll get you games work every time. The masses will never see them, and they'll fervently deny them, saying, bullshit, that's crazy, right? I can't be fooled, right? They'll deny it out of their ego and pride. You can't fool me. That's crazy talk. That's conspiracy theory. No one's that smart. No one can do that stuff. This new Cold War, which the USA is driving, is fueling an arms race, which will make a lot of money for well-positioned people, but will be a waste of resources that are far better spent upon advancing U.S. commercial technology, promoting U.S. commercial competitiveness, switching to clean energy and transportation, all of which will create jobs and grow the economy, which is the real backbone of military security. Right? And I present just a statement by Clausewitz. Right? This is like a cliche statement. It's so often used. War is a continuation of politics by other means. Like everyone knows this line, right? Right. But what they don't know, he forgot to say, the end goal of both international politics and war is economics. Right? So, what's the purpose of both politics and war? Economics. The fundamental element of military strategy is economics, because that's what makes possible your war-fighting capability on a strategic level. The fundamental means of military strategy is effectively controlling resources, both human and material. I'd say half of military strategy is simply that. Being smart about controlling your human and material resources. Human, a lot of this is morale, motivation. You got to jack up your population and get them all pumped up to fight. All right. Yeah. What was that? Okay. Okay. Yeah. You know, here's one example. Controlling your human resources, right? Just one area. All the computer and engineering, specialist talent we have for this damn arms race, right? Right. There's a shortage. There's a shortage in the commercial, private sector here of talented people. All right. I mean, just get more people for whoever, for Tesla, right? They could do so much more if they had the engineers, right? The talented people. And that's a big part of our economic strategy. We got to get the talent, right? Anyways, that's a whole other thing. But war is a way the USA self-serving power elites get rich, right? They've been getting rich off of war for a long time now, right? I'd say World War I was a key turning point of the rise of the military-industrial complex, right? Over 100 years. Finally, and it's not just military, right? It's so many ways of making money off of war. I showed you that just with war in the Middle East. Finally, of the 17 times the USA jammed Russia with attacks and threats, this one, the U.S. support for the Euromaidan pro-Western movement, is the only one that is not fully direct. It is direct in $5 billion of aid and direct diplomatic support, but it's indirect through the actions of the U.S. pro-democracy NGOs. So they say, okay, this is indirect. You can't, right? Therefore, out of the 17 U.S. attacks on Russia, it is the only example with some weakness. That means that the self-serving liar pieces of crap will try to shift all focus on this one single case, right, and make a maximum effort to dishonestly use it to say, see, this example proves everything he says is bullshit. You can't believe any of it. You can't believe any and all of it, right? Thus, you can go and disregard it all and believe whatever you want to believe, which is what people do anyways, most people. Yeah, the baseless crap that makes you feel good, that's what people want to believe. Just watch the liars do it. Just watch them do it. Shift all focus here. Oh, once and for all, you can finally put it out of your mind. Right? We win! Game over! Yeah. But even if we take the liars' untenable and laughable position that the U.S. did not help the Euromaidan group that conducted the revolution and stole power, right? The USA's use of Russia's annexation of Crimea to make the claim that Russia is rapaciously hell-bent on conquering European countries to the west to rebuild its glorious old empire is an utter, farcical, ridiculous, comical joke. But this ridiculous half-witted notion is widely believed and is fueling a new Cold War arms race. That is undeniable fact, proven in both U.S. defense appropriation bills, which state it, and U.S. actions, including a shift to great power conflict, right, as expressed in force deployments in both military exercises and, for example, in stationing of the 1,000-man triple-armed forces, in the Baltic states and in Poland, right? All right, so, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Key thing is, I risk this because I'm concerned about these pro-democracy NGOs and the crap they can do in the future, the instability and conflict and chaos they can create in the future, right? And how they can create greater problems between the great powers, right? So now in the next section, I'll show you how Russia militarily is a paper tiger, incapable of rebuilding its glorious empire by force, right? It's just, right, king with no clothes, crap everyone believes, right? Even during the Cold War, I'm like the only person who's saying, what are you talking about? Russia's about ready to fall apart. Russia, this great military. So everyone believed it. Everyone. No one was saying otherwise. I was like the only person saying otherwise. I was like, what? They're about to fall apart. Who are you kidding? And now I was the only person who was right. Why? Social reality. Oh, well, retards followed social reality. Fat king with no clothes. All right, that's it.